I just finished reading the Gut and Physiology Syndrome book. It cost me a fair amount. It was about, I don't know, 70 something dollars here in Australia. I could only get it in book form, I couldn't get it in ebook, digital form. But for sure, it's probably, out of all the books I've read about healing and all that sort of thing, it's probably the best. Actually, it's definitely the best by far that I've ever read. There's some things in it that I agree with and things in it that I don't fully agree with, but obviously I'm only agreeing and disagreeing based on my own experience and theoretical understanding of things. I like to go with experience more than anything. Um, but yeah, it's incredibly motivating book, and her fundamental understanding is usually in the right place in terms of being evolutionarily consistent mostly. Um, but yeah, I mean, first, what I can do is just explain basically what it is. You've probably all heard of the GAPS diet, gut and physiology syndrome. She wrote a book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, I think 2001. That book was successful, so she wrote another one. I think it was only last year, this one that I just read, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. So she basically heals most mental and physical illnesses through diet, mainly just diet alone. The way she does it is that there's certain levels to it. Level one is primarily meat stock, and certain meats, mainly just things like boiled chicken, boiled beef that you make in the meat stock, and you can add some vegetables to it as well. And then it moves up from there. It's basically you just add more and more foods from there. It's basically just meat, vegetables, and fruit. There's no starches, so no potatoes. No grains, no beans, no, things like that. So, sort of a basic paleo concept type thing, but just meat, fruit, vegetables, focusing mainly on the meat and vegetables. And minimizing at the start, you minimize fiber quite a bit. So, for me, the parts that I agree with is basing the diet around animal foods. That for me was one of the biggest things that improved my health. Eating mainly animal foods. I eat every day. I eat my before about 12 p.m. I'll eat as much usually red meat as I can eat. Sometimes usually including chicken or whatever. It's usually about a kilo or so, and I'll eat until I'm fully. My body just says stop eating the meat. You don't need any more. Then, yeah, and I just feel better doing that. Usually, fatty meat is the best for me. Um, so I do agree with that. She doesn't really express it in the same way. She talks more about boiling a whole chicken and eating the parts of the chicken and not frying the meat. I'm fine with fried meat. Um, yeah, I've never had any issues with it at all. So I definitely agree with basing the diet on animal foods. She also says that the body goes through a natural period of cleansing up until about 10 a.m. This is consistent with my experience where I don't really get hungry until 10 or 11 a.m. And so I believe not eating food until your body's done, until it's ready to eat. So eating breakfast is ridiculous, in my opinion. I'll eat most of my food, the majority of my food at around 10 or 11 a.m., and then I won't eat until 5 or 6 p.m., and then the meal at night is maybe fruit. It's always fruit, to be honest, and only blueberries at this point because that's all I can tolerate. But she says to avoid fruit initially and to instead have vegetables. I don't agree with that. Vegetables have never been good for me. Um, there's no vegetable that I seem to be able to tolerate. There's a few that if I juice them, they're okay. So the low carb ones, for some reason, if I mix lemon with cucumber, celery, and ginger, and I juice them with no fiber, it seems okay. I don't really react to that, but I mean, who can be bothered making that? So I don't bother. But if I eat generally any vegetable, I react to it, and a lot of people seem the same. I think people are more tolerant to low carb fruits than vegetables, so mainly things like maybe cucumber, berries, things like that. If you, yeah, so for me, the animal food with a bit of fruit, keeping the animal foods and the fruit separate from each other is the best. Something else that she talks about is eating fat. with the fruit, and I don't agree with that either. I recommend just eating fat and meat on its own, and then in a separate meal, eat the fruit. Maybe a few hours later, 3 or 4 hours later, it takes me before I can do it, before I won't react to it. So fruit on its own. So have a low carb meal and a high carb meal every day. Um, but I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. It's yeah, everyone's different. Um, and she says to get sunlight every day, mainly in the morning and the afternoon. I do try to do that, and I do feel better when I do it. This is something about the sun. On the weekends, I try to get as much sun as I possibly can until my body says to stop. I get this really uncomfortable feeling where my body doesn't want to be in the sun anymore, and that's what I think. That's when it's telling me that it's had enough. Um, so yeah, um, at the moment, I'm really only tolerating animal foods and blueberries for some reason. I haven't found anything else that I can tolerate. Also, I can have a bit of honey, but the honey has to be raw and unfiltered. It seems like any other type of honey seems to affect me pretty negatively. So I have a little bit of honey at night as well. Um, but yeah, she also talks. Oh, actually, no, I've been having one egg. So that's another thing that I agree with. Something that I was doing, um, I wasn't doing too well with was like if I wanted to introduce the food, I'd just eat heaps of it. And she talks about eating a little bit at a time. So just starting off with, having one egg a day until it's tolerated. And that's what I've been doing is have a single egg yolk every day, just because of the high density nutrition in there. And I seem okay with it. I don't seem to react too badly to it or anything. So I'm just going to keep doing that for as long as I can. Maybe eventually add two. The body might be able to tolerate it. I feel like after I've been doing this for about a month and consistently, I might add an apple, something like that, to see if I can get my body to start tolerating more foods. Something else she talks about is probiotics. I completely react so badly to them. She says you basically need to take them every day. Natural form is better, so fermented foods, obviously, I react to fermented foods really badly. I try pharmaceutical probiotics, but I react to them really badly as well. Um, she says that when you take them, you have die-off reactions, so you can feel really bad. I don't know if that's what's happening to me, but when I take them, I just feel utterly miserable, brain fog, and sort of depressed and really low energy, and it's terrible. So I can't handle it, even if I take a really little bit. So I understand the need for them. So I'm going to be what I'm thinking of doing is maybe kombucha or one of those sort of fermented fruit drinks that's no dairy, and just start with a teaspoon a day or even half a teaspoon a day until I can tolerate it, and see how that goes. The other thing she talked about was the meat broth. I did try this for a fair bit. I didn't really notice a difference just drinking the water, the heated water that I boiled the chicken in. I don't really notice any difference. I did use it a couple of times and I reacted to it. I think it was too old if I left it in the fridge for a week or so. So I don't know. It's just not worth the risk for me. So I'm just been eating frozen blueberries and as fresh as possible meat. Another thing I agree with is she does say that it's best to get organic fruits and vegetables, but with meat, it's not as important. People go on and on about grass-fed and organic beef and stuff. I tend to agree with her. She says that it's really not heaps as different or as better as we think, because the animals' bodies are able to basically fix most of the issues that you would think would happen if they're eating a diet that's not great. All cows are grass-fed initially anyway. But yeah, the only thing I ever found with organic beef is I do find it does taste a bit better. Well, the stuff I was getting a while back did anyway, but it's just so expensive that my diet's already so incredibly expensive that I just simply can't do it. But I guess if you had the money, you may as well do it. It's sort of like odds are it's going to be better for you in some degree. But I don't think it's as major as we think. But that's just my instinct, and sort of, it's not really experiential at all. So who knows with that stuff. But if you can only do supermarket meat, then do it. There's no excuse to not be eating animal foods. Um, and yeah, she talks about vegetarian diets and how it's incredibly difficult to heal on them, same as vegan diets. I agree. I've tried vegan, I've tried vegetarian, I've done all that stuff. It made everything worse, and it was near impossible. All the fiber and the junk and the artificial foods that you're just forcing down, oats and rice and bread, wheat, whatever, just tons of this crap going into your stomach. These seed oils destroying you. It's just not going to work. We need animal fat. We need animals to heal. Um, I can't really think of anything else, but that's the main gist of it. I It did motivate me tons. Really feel motivated, and I've been very strong and just sticking to my meat and blueberry only diet. The most sort of consistent I've ever been. Uh, Actually, one of the main things she talks about is one of the biggest things that had an effect on me is the first step that anyone needs to do in order to heal is break their addiction to processed foods. So just break it. Just never eat anything processed again for the rest of your life. And understand that that's what it's going to take in order to heal. So no processed anything at all. Anything that mankind has altered with machines or whatever, it's gone. You just have to accept you can't have pizza ever again. You can't have ice cream, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, that's just the way we are. We've been damaged by food, damaged by whatever. And we have to accept that if we're going to learn how to heal and learn the lessons that illness gives you, then, we have to learn the lesson that artificial foods and processed foods are not something that our bodies are going to be able to handle and experience. And to be honest, it's just a minute, a second of pleasure in the mouth, and it's not worth it. The meat and the fat and the animal fat and meat satisfies you like crazy. We don't need pizza, we don't need bread, we don't need all that stuff. We can get satiated, we can taste some amazing things with natural foods only, so it's not necessary. And I would say that that's the first step, is making a resolve to never eat processed foods again to yourself. Just accept it. Grieve if you have to. Just accept that you're not the kind of person that can do it, and then move from there. And from there, the healing sort of the healing can begin, because you just won't be causing all this damage. She does talk about sometimes some little bit of reactive or processed food can set you back a few months of healing, because the healing timeline is generally 1 to 2 years or more, because it just takes a long time to heal the gut. I'm guessing because we are constantly using it. It's a very complex thing. But yeah, no, that's pretty much all the main points that I wanted to get to. Amazing book, best one I've ever read on the topic. So anyone who's interested, I highly recommend getting this book. Thank you.